easy. I got on it last night, and it takes 2 seconds to fill out, but it really gives us a great opportunity to hear what your thoughts are, and because this is for our parents, so that you can leave today with a few tools in your tool belt. And again, we're going to be having another program coming up again on November 14th. What's going to be interesting, backed by popular demand, is Dr. Mike Patrick. He's going to bring up a panel for a panel discussion again. We did this on young children and up until high school age on all the different topics. This time we're going to talk about the wellness of mental health wellness and kind of go through all the different structures. So you'll see someone from Sentaro, Nationwide Children's Hospital, Dublin City Schools, and just how it all affects all of us and how we're all working together in our community on these important issues. And he does such a good job. He has his own podcast. I mean, you can go on and see his different podcasts and so forth. And I think it'll be just a great evening too. What's exciting is that this is our first one for the year, and we're so excited that we have Dr. Hinkleman with us tonight. Oh, before that, I'd like to thank I also mentioned Nationwide Children's Hospital, and I like to say Sentaro. Those two come and meet at our meetings once a month. And what's great is that they bring in community information that's happening around, and we'd like to really thank them. Also, Ohio Health has donated to some of our different programs, which has been great. In Courtyard by Marriott, when we bring somebody in, they house them, which was really nice. That was helpful. And then Dublin Act, and of course, Dublin City Schools. Like I said, we meet, and they have been so helpful to us throughout the year. We also have the levy out there too, and there's information that's happening on issue 5. So I just leave that there so that everybody understands what the whole issue is, because that'll be coming up on November 6th. Without further ado, let me introduce our speaker tonight, which I'm so excited to have here. Dr. Lisa Hinkleman is an educator, counselor, research, author who has spent nearly 15 years researching girls and educating counselors as both a professor at Ohio State University and the founder and CEO of Ruling Our Experiences, ROX, R-O-X. ROX is a nationally nonprofit program that provides evidence-based empowerment programming. You're going to see this through the whole program, talking about that. Her book, which is outside for $25, sorry, Girls Without Limits, Helping Girls Achieving Healthy Relationships and Interpersonal Strengths. It provides evident research, case study, and effective strategies to help adults support the girls in their lives. Dr. Hinkleman is also a principal investigator and author of the publication Girls Index. She's going to talk a lot about this too, which will be helpful. Girls Index reveals the findings from a survey conducted nearly over 11,000 girls across the country. So it'll be interesting to see the research that comes from that. And then before I go on, our superintendent, Dr. Hoadley, brought our speaker tonight to us. He had heard her in the community and said, this would be a really good thing for us. So I'm really glad that he did, because I think it's very beneficial to all of us. And then also, Lisa, she received her undergraduate degree in psychology, and then her master's and doctorate degree from The Ohio State University. So without further ado, we're very happy to have you, and thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out in the rain tonight. I was here this morning and did, this is kind of the same gig. And then you kind of go through the whole day, and it's been like so crummy and rainy all day. And I was coming back, and I was like, I wonder if anyone's going to show up, because I'm not even sure that I want to show up right now. You know what I mean? Like, you get to that point, and you're like, oh my gosh. So I am so excited that you showed up, because I feel like every time I do a speaking engagement, or there's a subject or a topic about something I feel incredibly passionate about, I always wonder if I'm like alone in that space, right? And And when people come out in the evenings, when they have a million family obligations, when it's raining and dreary, and still came, right? And for me, that just shows a level of investment and care that you have for girls and for this topic and for learning and for inspiring and for being a great parent to your girls. So let me get a sense of who's here. Can I switch to this one? Thanks. So who has a daughter? Okay, pretty much most folks. Who has a girl younger than elementary school age? Okay, how about a girl in elementary? Middle school? High school? College? Okay, great. So I felt like there was a lot of elementary school folks. Can we turn that down just a little bit?
Okay.
I felt like I couldn't see you all before, and now I'm like, now I feel like I'm going to do a monologue. So what I want to share with you today is a little bit about my work and a bunch about some research on girls. But let me start by asking you this. If you left here today with something, some information, a tool, a tactic, a strategy, what would you need to leave here today and be like, that's something I wanted to learn. That's why I came to that. Anything come top of mind for you?
Helping my child with anxiety.
Helping girls' anxiety.
Yeah.
Okay, great. What else? Anything else?
Teaching my
Yeah.
daughter to say no.
So, helping somebody say no?
Teaching my daughter to say no.
Teaching somebody to say no. Okay, great.
Helping my daughter accept the right friends
Helping my daughter.
and avoid the mean girls.
Okay, helping my daughter accept the right friends and avoid the mean girls. Okay.
Helping my daughter increase her confidence and celebrate her individuality.
Okay, help my daughter expand her confidence and celebrate her individuality. All right, I'm down with these so far. Nothing too crazy. How to parent a strong-willed child without breaking her spirit, right? Ooh, I want her to be so confident and so strong. Ooh, do I? Like, do I want her to be that strong? Yes.
How to balance social media.
Oh, social media. Okay. How many people are challenged by social media? Okay. I think everyone should raise their hand because it's madness. All right. So let me tell you a little bit about my work and why I'm here and what I hope to share with you. So I run an organization called ROCKS. Has anyone ever heard of that before? All right. About 4 people, which actually is fine because I keep saying like, ROCKS is the best kept secret in Columbus. So ROCKS stands for Ruling Our Experiences. We are a nonprofit that is headquartered here in Columbus, Ohio. ROCKS actually started out in 2006 when I was a professor at Ohio State. So my background is in counseling, in school counseling and mental health counseling. And when I was on the faculty, I started a study to look at what is happening in girls' lives and what are the actual evidence-based strategies that we can implement into girls' lives to help them develop new skills, new behaviors, new attitudes, and really put them on a different trajectory. Because what I was seeing is drops in confidence, conflict with other girls, difficulty in relationships, challenges around body image, and what I didn't see was any kind of comprehensive and professionally delivered program or intervention that addressed all of those issues. Right? What I saw was, oh, we have a bullying prevention program, or over here we help girls be nice and kind to each other, and it's friendship. And over here we have a leadership program, and it's all service learning, and we go clean up trash together. And this one we paint butterflies and send them out into the world. And I'm like, okay, so all of this sounds so nice, but it's actually kind of junk, right? And so if we actually dissect the behaviors that we want girls to establish, we have to create interventions that teach those behaviors and skills.
So put a little research team together and started studying this. And so we developed some lessons and piloted it with 57 girls in 2006. And then we took that data and expanded our curriculum. And we took those learnings to change what we were doing. And this incubated at OSU for 5 years. In 2011, I decided to leave the university to focus on ROCS full time. And we have a model now where we, and I'll come back to this in a second, where we deliver evidence-based programming through professional delivery. So we train and license school counselors and social workers and educators through a 3-day licensure training to implement a small group 20-week experience in their schools with girls. And we focus on lots of topics and subjects, but healthy communication and relationships and teaching girls how to stand up for themselves and be strong and say no and be courageous and brave and confident. We also talk about body image in the media and what are the messages that girls are getting that make them feel a certain way about themselves. We talk about social media and how to navigate the world of social media and how that influences and impacts all of these dimensions. We talk about stress and pressure and leadership and career development. And really, we take this lens of what are all the messages that girls are getting that have the potential to restrict them and hold them back? What are all those messages that they're internalizing about what they should be, look like, act like, be good at, not be good at, because they're a girl? And how do we give them some tools around it? And so at this point, ROCS operates over 200 programs in 13 states. We do have some programs here in Dublin, and these are the schools where ROCS is currently operating. You can see that 3 of those schools, this is just the first year for the program. So in addition to this evidence-based program, we also conduct large-scale national research, and some of it I'm going to share with you today. We just conducted the largest survey of girls in the country called the Girls Index, and I'll also give you a link to be able to download the full report from that. And then the last thing that we do is professional development and education. We think if we're going to empower girls and have them be moving through and thinking about themselves and their opportunities differently, we need to also be simultaneously talking to the adult influencers in their lives, right? We want everyone who has the opportunity to influence or impact girls be reinforcing and reiterating strong and powerful messages for her. We have this mission at ROCS to create generations of confident girls who control their own relationships, experiences, decisions, and futures. And that's essentially what we do as an organization. I'm going to show you a quick little video.
The world is complicated for girls. It's a difficult place for them to develop a strong sense of confidence. Confidence in their bodies, their abilities, their opinions, their opportunities. And ultimately, confidence in themselves. But what if there was an in-depth, evidence-based solution to help girls develop the skills needed to navigate these challenges? To help them learn how to stand up for themselves, handle pressure and conflict, and learn the power of no, stop, I can, I will. This is the power of ROCS, a different kind of organization with only one mission: to equip girls with the skills to live strong, independent, safe, and courageous lives. ROCS isn't just a curriculum, it's a movement. ROCS is empowering thousands of girls and is training parents and educators with programs in schools and communities across the country. Join the movement to help every girl say,
I'm a ROCS girl, and I'm ruling my own experiences
from this generation forward. Go to rulingourexperiences.org to learn more.
So for us, we work with girls in grades 5th through 12th grade. We have an elementary and a secondary curriculum. And when we look at research, we've historically looked at where are girls at before ROCS, where are they at after ROCS, and we measure those differences. which is cool. So we have thousands of data sets on the efficacy of our program. But if you're like me, when you have a subject that you're intensely interested in, you read everything that's ever written about that, right? Or people send you everything that's ever written. And so that's where I am with girls. And so over the last 15 years, it's been, hey Lise, here's this article about girls, or you should read this book, or here's this new study that came out. And I was repeatedly frustrated because it would be like, hey, we just conducted this study and we surveyed 107 girls, and here's what girls think. And that does not make a representative sample, right? We talked to 100 girls, we interviewed 35 girls, we surveyed this many girls at this particular school. And so I decided that if we were going to be the national expert on girls, that we better go ahead and do that. And so in 2015 and 16, we started to conceptualize a research study. And we looked at how many girls live in the United States, and we looked at how many we would need to survey in order to get a representative sample of girls across the country. And so we didn't just want a representative sample, but we wanted to be able to say that our findings with 99% confidence were generalizable to girls in the United States. And so what we ended up doing was putting together this survey called the Girls Index, and we surveyed more than 10,000 girls, which gets us to that place. And our data is representative of the US Census as well. I'll give you the link to pull down the full report at the end of my time together. So let me ask you this, when you think about the big things going on for girls, the issues impacting girls, you mentioned some of them earlier about stress and social media. What are some of the other things that you think are the issues impacting girls today?
Yeah, one that we are challenged with is body image.
Body image,
And
yeah.
how society projects how women should look.
For
and
sure.
How we actually look.
Absolutely, right? There's an intensity around body image, and an intensity for girls to look a certain way and have certain kinds of skin and hair and body shape and eyebrows and, you know, every single aspect of how we look is often under scrutiny. Yeah.
Disabilities. My daughter is on the autism spectrum. So with her, she struggles with being accepted because she's different.
Yeah, any kind of difference, right? A disability, and being a minority, being a sexual minority, right? There's all these, any space of difference can very easily get exploited, right? What other kinds of things come to mind?
The message that boys are mean because they like you.
Ooh, the message that boys are mean because they like you. That one drives me bananas, right? Oh, he's just teasing you because he likes you. That's why he's being mean to you. Yeah, that one. Anything else come to mind of like the things you see girls that's impacting girls now? And I know we have some girls here too, so I'm not going to put any of them on the spot. But here's what we have to all promise not to do. So you all have to promise that when everything you learn today, you're not going to go home to your daughter and be like, oh my gosh, I heard this horrible data. That's not you, is it? You don't think that, do you? Right? You're going to say, hey, so I learned it. Like, what do you think about that? Right? Don't put her on the spot. But she's already like, oh my God, my parents heard this thing about girls.
Puberty.
Any other things come to mind about big things going on for girls? Peer pressure, for sure. Yeah?
Puberty.
Puberty,
Yes.
yeah. Can't get around that one. All right, so you bring up a lot of the things that we wanted to learn about what's going on for girls. And what we did was we put together all kinds of questions. Because we wanted to get to girls' perceptions and their ideas and what they actually think and want and feel and believe. We have a lot of data that already exists about how many girls graduate from high school and what percentage of girls go to college and what they major in. And we have a lot of data around how much money, you know, families make and economic information. But we never ask girls, like, what do you actually think? And we very rarely allow girls to be the experts on their own lives. Right? They're the experts on being girls right now. We're not. Many of us knew what it was like to be a girl like 100 years ago, which is real different than it is to be a girl right now. And we're like, oh, well, when I was your age. And they're like, ew, you were never my age, quit it, right? It's so different. You're like, no, it was the same thing, right? And they're like, ah. But so we wanted to say, like, you're the expert on being a girl, you're the expert on your own life, so tell me about it. Invite me into it. Instead of like, I know, I was your age once, I was there. So I'm like, you're the expert, help us understand it. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about what we learned.
At ROX, we wanted to gain a deeper understanding of the challenges girls face every day. Not just in one region, one community, or one type of school, but everywhere. That's why we developed the Girls Index, the first ever largest of its kind national survey designed to provide new insights into the complex world of today's girls. We surveyed over 10,000 girls from across the country and asked them about the issues impacting their lives. Here's what we learned. Confidence declines sharply from 5th to 9th grade and doesn't return to pre-middle school levels. By the time girls get to high school, 46% don't believe they're smart enough for their dream career. 1 in 3 stay away from leadership positions because they don't want to appear bossy. And 1 in 2 don't speak their mind or disagree with others because they want to be liked. Even among the highest achieving girls, confidence is an issue. 30% with a 4.0 grade point average don't think they're smart enough for their dream job. The Girls Index showed us that we are not dealing with a lack of confidence, rather a crisis of confidence. This research has also helped us understand the role of technology and social media in girls' relationships, aspirations, and well-being. We learned that most high school girls spend 6 hours each day using social media, and those who spend the most time online are 5 times more likely to say they are sad or depressed nearly every day. Girls who spend the most time engaged with technology and social media are less likely to have supportive friendships, participate in extracurricular activities, trust other girls, and enjoy coming to school. But by building confident girls who have effective friendships, we can combat many of these challenges. Over and over, as we asked girls what they needed to be successful, their number 1 response was confidence. Because confident girls are more likely to share their opinions. Confident girls put trust in themselves and each other. Confident girls grow up to be the brave leaders of tomorrow. Together, we can turn this crisis of confidence into the opportunity of a generation. To learn more about the groundbreaking research in the Girls Index and about ROX, go to www.rulingOurExperiences.org.
What jumped out?
6 hours.
6 hours a day on social media. Does that seem high? Accurate? Low? So that tends to be one of the stats that jump out to most audiences. And but when we've taken this data back to girls, and that jumps out to them too. They're like, that's high, but it's probably accurate. And I shared this earlier. I was speaking to a group a couple weeks ago, and I had a father in the audience who had a 15 and a 17-year-old daughter, and he said, that's 6 hours a day, that's low. And I was like, oh man, right? So 6 hours a day on social media, yeah. What else jumped out to you that seems surprising or something new? Yeah.
The 30% of athletes get a 4.0 don't feel like they're going to succeed in career choice.
Yes. So when we think about the highest achieving girls, right? And now like a 4.0 is kind of average, right? Because you can get like a 4.8 or some kind of ridiculous thing that makes absolutely no sense, right? But you can take all the AP weighted classes and do all the things to get a ridiculously inflated GPA. And what we find when we look at that girl with the highest GPA she's actually, compared to all other girls, the least likely to say that she'll speak her mind or disagree with others because she wants people to like her. So there's something real tangled up in some perfectionism there probably, right? And she's most likely to be the one that's overlooked. When I first started Rocks, people would be like, oh, I'm so glad you're working with those girls. And I'm like, which girls are they? Oh, they're the troubled girls. You know, the girls at these schools, and I'm like, oh wait, hold on. Like, girls are at risk for negative outcomes simply because they're girls. Okay? Girls experience more mental health issues. Girls experience more body image issues. Girls experience higher rates of sexual violence. Girls experience lower career aspirations and lower economic attainment, right? Simple risk for being girls. And so there's not these girls and those girls, it's just girls. And so when we categorize, well, let's make programs for those girls, we completely dismiss the challenges that are impacting the girls who seemingly have it all put together, right? She gets great grades, she's great at her sports, she's beautiful, so we think she needs nothing. But what this demonstrates to us is that it's a pretty universal experience that even the total package girl is still having some challenges. Any other data point that jumped out to you from the video? Yeah.
I was just curious why, if it starts in 5th grade, is there a 4th or 3rd grade prevention program?
Yeah, so this is the first time we did the Girls Index, and we started the data in 5th grade, and our curriculum only goes to 5th grade so far. So I actually couldn't tell you those rates for 3rd or 4th grade, and I don't know where those exist like that. But I'll tell you what, for sure, when I look at that drop, I'm like, how do we keep those 5th graders where they are? And how do we build up those middle school and high school girls to compensate for the deficit that's happening? All right. So I always find this interesting because some people think like, oh, this is like the tale as old as time. Girls go through all the things and they all turn out fine. But I think that what girls are dealing with now is real different than what I dealt with when I was a girl and what maybe many of you dealt with when you were girls too. And I think the number one thing, and tell me if you disagree, is social media. So when Rocks first started, like 2006, Facebook wasn't even a thing. Like Facebook was invented or like kind of starting in 2006. And now girls are like, ew, who's on Facebook? Facebook's stupid, right? Because we're all on Facebook, right? It's like my mom and my grandma are on Facebook, yeah, right? So like the currency around that is completely gone. And like Facebook used to be cool. And it was like you had to have a college email address to like start your account. And it was like the thing. And so even when our first curriculum started, like we didn't have anything in it on social media because it wasn't a thing. And now I will confidently say that it's probably the number one thing that's impacting all of these spaces of girls' lives. So let me share with you a little bit about what we're learning. Oh, I gotta make this point because it's so fascinating to me. When you think about how you grew up, and aside from the girls who are in the room, I would venture to say that most of us did not grow up with a cell phone, and certainly not a smartphone. Like I remember my first cell phone, and it was like as big as this computer, you know, and it like had an antenna, and it like had a green screen. It was like one of those big, and I just thought I was real cool with this phone, right? And it cost like 95 cents a minute to talk on it, and you know, remember that? But now, how many of you have a cell phone with you? Okay. That's pretty much everybody, I think. Now, what would have happened if you left your house to come here today and you left that phone on your counter, on your kitchen counter? You'd like have a hot flash, like a panic attack. You'd be in the car, you probably would have went home. You're like, oh my God, today's the day I'm gonna get a flat tire and I'm not gonna be able to call anybody and it's raining, right? It's very rare that it's ever very far from you. Right? Have you ever been like, hours have gone by and you don't know where your phone is? occasionally. Do you think hours go by for teens today and they don't know where their phone is? No. Right? It's an extension of ourselves at this point. And for those of us who remember a time before, we can almost like take a pause and be like, just put your phone down and talk to somebody. Right? That's what we say to kids. Just have a conversation. And they're like, ew. Why? This is a conversation. Right? But we've even gotten to the point now where we get annoyed when people leave us voicemails. Right? Like, I see that you called. Yeah, why are you, like, I see. And then we're like, thank God these voicemails are now transcribed. So I don't actually have to listen to it. I can just get the gist of it, right? We've transformed so markedly as people who didn't grow up with it, right? So we're these immigrants to technology. We didn't grow up with it, but we figured it out, and now we're all in. Or kind of all in, as all in as we can be. For girls, it's never been a without, right? The extension of them is part of their growing up. They don't have a time before, because they were like 6, you know? So it wasn't like, oh, I remember those days when I used to talk on the phone in the kitchen, right? Like I had one of those, I grew up and we had like a kitchen phone that was like one of these, and it had like a real long cord that was curly, and I'm dating myself, right? But you would like pull it as far as you could into the hall so like your parents couldn't hear you talking, but at any moment they could pick it up and be like, please get off the phone. Right? I mean, that was my reality of social life, right? Which is markedly different than what girls have now. And so when we think about this evolution and we try to make sense of it, it's so different than our lived experience that we're just like, that's stupid. I don't understand it. Put the phone away. I don't even know why you talk to those girls. Can you just put that phone down for 5 minutes? Right? And they're like, this is my extension of myself, of my social life. This is my social capital. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the findings that we have seen in this Girls Index data. Now, I need to make clear that when we talk about the data, we're not talking about relationships that are causal. We're talking about correlations, right? So when I present this data, I want it to be clear that it's not like, oh, when girls spend this much time online, this is the cause, right? This is what happens. It's like, these two things are related in a way that we need to pay attention to, okay? And so when we're looking at this particular graph, we're looking at the number of hours that girls are spending using technology and their perceptions of some things. And so when we look at the green bars, we see the percentage of girls who say that they'd like to change their appearance. So the more time girls are spending engaged with technology, the more likely they are to want to change how they look. When we look at the pink and the black, the more time girls are spending, the less likely they are to describe themselves as confident, and the less likely they are to say that they like coming to school. Now, which causes which, we don't know, but we know that there's a relationship here. The other piece that I often get asked about is things around sexting, and because it freaks everybody out massively, and nobody knows what to do except like tell their kid, don't do that, or you're going to be a sexual predator on the registry for the next 30 years, right? Like that's our strategy right now, and it's a poor strategy, right? It doesn't seem to be working well. But let me just tell you what we're seeing, or what is reported. Now, once again, this is not a stat to go home and be like, so we heard this, but that's not you, right? You respect yourself too much, right? That's just not how to have this conversation. So, here's what we see. We started asking in 6th grade, because the principals wouldn't let us ask the 5th grade girls, which is funny. But we asked about students who send each other sexually explicit texts and photos, and we asked the girls if they've been asked. We didn't say, have you sent a photo? Because that gets us into a whole other category of reporting. But what we found was, as you see these increases, is by the time girls are in high school, 75% say most students might send sexually explicit texts and photos to each other. And, 2 out of 3 say that they've been asked. When we take this data back to girls, they say that these stats are quite low. And they say it's much more pervasive than that. I think for us, we have this odd juxtaposition of adolescent sexual exploration coupled with increasing technology in a way that laws and parents can't keep up with. And it makes for a pretty tricky navigation, right? There's lots of researchers who are starting to look at these impacts, but there's a lot of challenge in how to have these conversations. And I'll talk more about that. This makes sense. The more time that girls are spending on technology, the more likely they are to have been asked to send a revealing photo. Here's what we also found, is that the majority of girls say that their parents rarely or ever monitor their use of social media. Now, I'm fairly confident if I asked you, do you monitor your kids' social media? You'd be like, I am on that phone every day. I pick it up whenever I want. I read everything I want on it. It goes in a basket at 10 p.m. in the kitchen, and it is not to be taken out till the morning. I hear all kinds of things. We shut off the internet at our house at a certain time each night. I have apps installed where I monitor every keystroke that the child makes. I hear one that kind of creeped me out was this parent who said, I'm sitting in my living room with my iPad and I'm reading every text right as he's sending it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be so great for your relationship, And I think that we've landed in this place of, we're just gonna monitor the crap out of these kids and we're gonna install all the things, and that's how we're gonna keep them safe. And let me tell you this story. Okay, so I do this talk on social media, and it's called Sexting, Texting, and Selfies. And I was doing this for a big group at a counseling conference. And there was maybe like 200 or 300, it was this huge room. And it wasn't a particularly interactive session, right? And there was this woman in the back who raised her hand, and she said, I have a 16-year-old son, and I told him that if he ever sends a picture or if he ever asks for a picture, he's going to go to jail and then he's going to go to hell. And I'm like, oh my gosh, right? And she was not playing. And I think my neck started to get red. And I'm like, okay, so this is a strategy that some of us employ, right? But think back to your adolescent growing up years. And when I think back to mine, fear of jail or hell did not always keep me on the straight and narrow, right? But it made me learn how to be more tricky, right? So if monitoring is the only thing that's happening, trust. I'm gonna figure a workaround. I'm gonna outfox you every time. Because I'm a digital native, right? You're still figuring it out. You're going to sessions to learn about the new. Meanwhile, I'm cracking the codes on everything at home, right? So, okay, has anyone in here ever taught somebody how to drive? This is the worst experience of your life. I think it would be such a difficult thing to do. But let's think about how we learn how to drive. So when we're little kids, we get in the car with our parents and we pay attention, right? We know how to put on our seatbelt. We know where the driver sits and where the kids sit. We get super excited when we can sit in the front seat for the first time because we're big enough, right? But we know how to start the car. We know that you stop at stop signs, right? Kids are taking cues of how to do something because they're watching you, right? And so then they like turn 15 and a half and can like go get their permits, right? And so they take a test and then they take driver's ed, because we sometimes pay other people to teach them how to do this, right? Like, take my child out for hours, it's great. But then we drive with them, right? And we take them out when it's sunny, and then it's like, okay, they got that down, let's take them down when it's raining, and then when it's snowing, because that's more scary and hazardous. And let's teach them how to merge on the highway, let's teach them how to parallel park, and let's teach them how to do all of the things that we might anticipate would be challenges for them when they're actually driving on their own. Right? We're meticulous about it because it's scary. Because they can hurt themselves or somebody else. So we start this process early and we invest in it continually. Kid doesn't turn 16 and we're like, oh my gosh, I just bought you a brand new car. Go for it. Hope it goes well. We spend the time. But we do that with technology. Because I hear like, well, they can't have a smartphone until they're 14, or 10, or 11, or whatever the arbitrary age is, 8, you know? And then it's like, well, you're old enough, so now you can have it. It'd be the same as like, well, you're old enough, so go for it. If we thought about teaching social media literacy and technology skills in the same way that we teach other competencies to our kids, it wouldn't be such a scary prospect, because they watch what you're doing. Right? And here's the number one thing I hear from girls. My parents complain how much time I spend on social media, and my mom's on her phone all the time. Right? And I had a girl recently say, like, she was at a game for her sport, and she like made a goal, and like, you know, looked up to her mom, and her mom didn't even see it, because she was on her phone. Right? So they learn by watching us, but then they learn by our interactions and communication and instruction and conversations with them. Like, think about a little kid, right? And you're teaching them how to cross the street. You wouldn't be like, go for it, right? Hope this goes well. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to do, right? We're like, hope this goes well, or I'm gonna take that phone away. Hope this goes well, or we're gonna have to rethink this. No, we're like, hold hands, point out the dangers, look both ways, walk across together. So we have to shift the way that we approach this to a competencies, that kids can develop competencies. And when I think about what skills girls need to not send a naked photo to somebody, it is way more than self-respect. And that's all we're telling girls. If you respected yourself, you would never do that. Trashy girls do that. If he respected you, he would never ask. It's so much more than this. So let's talk about what skills girls need to not have sex with someone they don't want to have sex with. It's more than self-respect. It's boundaries. It's having a gut instinct and knowing what my boundary is, what I'm okay with and what I'm not. It's having assertiveness to be able to say, like, yeah, dude, I don't want to do that. I'm not cool with that. It's having the belief that I can have a right to say something. It's refusal. It's boundaries. It's knowing when to engage an adult. We're not doing a really good job teaching girls that in real life, but we expect them to do that when it comes to technology. We have a pervasive challenge with teaching boundaries and assertiveness and worth and value for girls. So I'd totally get it if we had this like generations of girls who are like standing up for themselves and know how to trust their gut and can deal with pressure in situations because they've practiced it, but they haven't because we're afraid to talk to them about it. Because we're just like, you would never do that. Don't ever do that. don't ever go to the basement at a party, don't ever drink too much, right? Like we just say don't do all these things, but we don't tell them what to do. We don't help them get that gut instinct and develop those words and know what the words would sound like coming out of their own mouth. So we got to teach the skills in real life and then help them apply it to technology. When do I end this conversation? When do I engage an adult? When do I say, no, dude, I'm not cool with that. I don't like that. No, stop, you're making me uncomfortable. That just doesn't happen, right? Those are skills that we have to teach. And when we think about what's going to impact our girls, we can't just like put them in this little bubble and then hope that they get it, right? Okay, you can't do this, you can't go here, you're not allowed to play with them, you can't go to this place, you can't see this movie, you can't listen to this music, right? All of these things are really good at setting these limits. But we're not really good at teaching the skills. We know 100% of girls have experienced pressure. It's a thing, right? 100% of girls are going to feel pressure in a dating situation. We know that's going to happen. So we have a responsibility to equip them for what is going to happen. 100% of girls, with medical exception, are going to get their periods. We know that's going to happen. We have a responsibility to prepare them for that, right? There should never be a, oh my God, what's happening right now? Like, we know that that's coming, so let's let them know that that's coming, right? It's the responsible parenting thing to do. No one should ever be like, am I dying? Like, no, you're a woman now. And they're like, ah, right? So I know, congratulations, right? Hooray. But when we think about this negative impact, we have to pack on the stuff to offset the impact of the negative, right? We have to pack on the skills so that when the pressure happens, I know exactly what to do. Because if you don't, then you can end up like me, and I will tell you why. I grew up outside of Pittsburgh, super conservative family, which you wouldn't necessarily know that at this point. But like I was like Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday church family. You know, the kids that aren't allowed to do anything except like be Bible kids. And so I was like super in this little bubble until I got to college, which was like going like the greatest place on earth, right? Because it was like, oh my gosh, I can do anything I want. I can go anywhere I want. I can drink anything I want. I can do, right? And it was like this Disney World for my 18-year-old self. And then my 1.86 grade point average got me straightened out pretty quick, right? Because I was that girl in high school, like super grade point average, super athlete, all the things. Not a lot of life skills. And it took me almost failing out of college to figure out how to develop some of those things. Because I wasn't prepared for the social aspect. I wasn't prepared to set boundaries. I wasn't prepared for the rigors and challenges that were ultimately going to face me. Part of that was my parents didn't go to college, so they didn't really know how to help me in that space. But part of it was, we didn't have those conversations. So here's some things. Let's actually teach girls how to set boundaries, and how to end a conversation, and how to deal with coercion. It's going to happen. Let's help them develop healthy relationships in real life and online. And let's treat this social media as competencies that require teaching and modeling, not just like figure it out. If we actually take the time to dissect this, and we actually take the time to have girls like, okay, how are you feeling right now? Is that like, how do you feel when that person's around? Or does that make you uncomfortable? Or, right, have them engage their internal dialogue. Because it's a really powerful thing. One of the things I hear so much of is that like social media is the worst thing that's ever happened in the world. And how many of you are on some type of social media? Okay, almost everybody. And how many of you, and you don't have to admit this, how many of you ever scroll through like Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and you're like, oh my gosh, I am so much prettier and more fit than all of these people in my newsfeed. Or, oh my gosh, my family is so much happier and has better Christmas outfits than this family. Like those whole things with these Christmas pajamas and stuff, I just find hilarious, right? But so we look at other people's lives and we compare ourselves, and it's very rare that we feel better after that. We look at others and we feel worse, right? We look at their vacations and we look at the flowers that they got at work for their birthday, and I didn't get any flowers for my birthday, right? And we make these comparisons in ways that are often leave us feeling not so great. And we are grown-ups with fully developed brains, if we are over the age of 24, and we still do it. So what can that mean for girls who are making comparisons and looking at the images and the messages about what they look like? I mean, because you could spend days watching YouTube tutorials on like perfect eyebrows, right? And there's stencils for eyebrows and stuff now, which I find fascinating, right? And that could be like a whole thing. And so how do we not just limit that, but how do we pack on some positive stuff to offset it, right? Because if all we do is limit the negative and we're not incorporating positive messages in it, then we're not winning the battle, right? And so when we think about positive ways to use social, think about why you're on it. Because you get to see people that you don't see very often. You might feel connected to your family that's out of state, or your nieces or nephews, you're watching them grow up, but you don't get to see them very often, or your friends from high school, which could be good or bad, right? But we can maintain these connections and sometimes get support for hard things that we're going through from people that we have a connection with. What if we helped girls realize that there's positive ways to use social media as well? That they can encourage other girls, and that they could do cool stuff, like plan their futures, right? Look at different girls who are doing cool things. It's not just a scam of Instagram models, right? There's all kinds of ways to help girls connect to the positive aspects of social media and using it for good, for social change, for activism, for empowerment. We have to try to offset some of those challenges in some positive ways. And I think if we just look at cutting them off from social media, we cut ourselves off from them. And I hear a lot of parents say, like the worst punishment right now is taking a phone away, right? That's like the worst possible thing you could ever do to a human. And, right, you just might as well end their lives completely because that's the worst thing. But when we demean social media as stupid or silly or a waste of time, we make ourselves less relevant to girls' lives. And because that's their currency, that's their relevance, and those are their relationships. And when we come at them from a place of demeaning, then they don't talk to us about it. Right? If you think what I'm into is stupid, why would I talk to you about it? Right? Maybe I'm into video games. And if you think that video games are stupid, all right, I'm not going to talk to you about that. Maybe I'm into sports. And if you're not into sports, okay, and you make me feel silly or stupid because I like them, I'm not going to talk to you about it. So when we maybe even unconsciously reiterate that, the divide gets larger. Okay. When we asked girls, the first question in the Girls Index was, what are the big things going on for girls your age? What do you think they said? What do you think they said? Not what do we think. What do you think the number one, yeah?
Talking by other
Girls talking about other girls? You're exactly right. Girls being mean to each other, drama, conflict, relationships with other girls was the #1 top theme throughout all. And we're like, oh, that's just girls being girls. Girls are so dramatic. Nah, that's like the legit thing. It's the thing that keeps girls not wanting to come to school. It's the thing that keeps girls from not speaking up. It's the thing that makes girls feel insecure and question themselves. It's other girls. And when we think about when some of this conflict starts, I mean, my research starts in 5th grade. I hear parents say like, oh, these girls are mean to each other in 2nd grade. I'm like, I'm not doing rocks in 2nd grade, right? Somebody else can do that, but right? It starts young. And I'm like, okay, so if we start in 5th grade, does it get better in middle school? Is that when girls start to support each other? How about high school? Are we super good to each other then? College? How about when we're grown-ups? This is where we bring each other along, right? So where do girls see good examples of female relationships? Shows that end in the word wives. Right? Every show that ends in wives, like Housewives, like there's every kind, Sister Wives, Mom Wives, like there's all the wives shows. And what do they demonstrate? Conflict, competition, drama. I will flip this entire dinner table over right on you because you looked at my husband. Right? I will right? That's what girls see. I think any show that ends in wives or any show that the goal of it is a single red rose. Right? What do we see? We see the worst in female behavior. Right? We see high levels of competition. We see very low levels of support. And girls don't see good role models of women being good to each other.
Yeah, actual question related to this. Is this something that's new in the current age because exposure to all the media, or it's always been the case, back 50, 60 years ago?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I'm not sure that I have a great answer to that. I know that some of the research that looks at relational aggression with girls, which is the fancy term for girl bullying behavior. It's how girls use their relationships to be mean to each other. Some of that research started in the early 90s, but I don't know well before that if there's a body of literature that has examined that over generations. What we have seen an increase in is relational aggression in boys, right, over the years. Because there's previously, and it still happens, right? Guys would just get in a fight, and they'll beat the crap out of each other, and then they're like buds the next day, right? And girls will be like, oh my God, I've hated her since 2nd grade. You are in like 11th grade now. She's like, I don't care, right? And it's just like we hold on to these ridiculous things for years and years, and it's intensely based in a lack of ability to communicate assertively. And I'm going to talk more about that, right? So when we look at girls' relationships with one another, we see some cool stuff, right? Most girls say that they have supportive friends they can talk to about serious issues. However, 40% say that they don't trust other girls, and 3 out of 4 say that most girls are in competition with each other. When we ask them what they're competing for, what do you think they say? Boys. Number one response is boys. And then there's like grades and sports and popularity and college and right. Number 1 thing is boys. And when we think about girls who compete with each other and women who compete with each other, there is some interesting things that we know. I'm always like, who's the meanest woman? Right? The girl or the woman who is the meanest to other women, right? The most hostile to other women, is the person with the lowest self-confidence, right? So self-esteem and relational aggression have an inverse relationship. Girls with higher levels of confidence true confidence do less girl bullying behavior, and it's the same for grown-up women. We looked at women's hostility to other women. So the women who are mean to one another have an insecure sense of self. And so when I think about that, that matters, right? Because if I don't feel good about myself, that I can't help you and bring you along because that's a threat to me, that says a heck of a lot more about me than it does about you. Right? And so when I see women who can't be good to each other and are like, oh my God, what is she wearing? What is she thinking? It says so much about that other person. And when girls hear and watch and see that, it reinforces for them how women get along with each other. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. And I think that that is not just an inherent part of being a girl. I think that's a socialized aspect that we've cultivated to be, that's girls being girls. No, it actually doesn't have to be this way. Because we can learn the skills that are associated with effective relationships, and this is what I challenge. Why friendships and relationships are critically important is because they're connected to other outcomes for girls. We're all like, ooh, friendship, that's so nice. You do that, do that somewhere, learn that somewhere else. We don't need to work on friendships and life skills and that kind of stuff at school. Like, we're academic, right? So this stuff about confidence and relationships, that's for somebody else to do. And yet, what we find is that you can have the most academically competent, highest performing kid, and if they don't have a strong sense of self, if they don't have empathy, if they don't have kindness and all these other life skills that we like poo-poo as like, oh, that's nice if you get that, but you better get these grades. We're doing an entire disservice to them. If we don't see social emotional competencies as interconnected, inextricably connected to academic competencies, we're not developing whole kids who are confident and competent and who will move through the world effectively. So when we look at high school girls, a third of them reported being sad or depressed 4 or more days a week. That's more days than they're not, right? This is troubling to me because when we looked at friendships and relationships, this is kind of cool. The girls with the most efficacious relationships had the lowest levels of sadness and depression. So here's what this graph is showing. Along the bottom is number of days per week reporting sadness and depression, from 0 to 7. The pink bar is the percent of girls who say that they don't trust other girls. Okay? So here, the lowest levels are here in 0 and 1. The green and the black are the percent of girls who say, I get along well with other girls, and I have supportive friends I can talk to about serious issues. As the relationships become more complicated, the sadness and depression increases accordingly. Now, we can't say what causes what here, again, but there's a relationship that warrants attention. And so if we're thinking about protective factors that relate to mental health, strong and effective relationships matter. We're like, oh, let's bring in all the crisis stuff. Let's talk about dangers and this and that. Let's teach kids how to develop strong relationships and how to communicate with each other and how to be good friends and how to be empathetic and how to stand up for themselves, right? Those are critical aspects of their development. We also see that the more time girls are spending on social, the more likely they are to say that they don't trust other girls. And we also see that the more time that they spend, the less likely they are to report having supportive friends or adults in their lives. When I think about these relationship skills, these are learned competencies. We don't just suddenly become good friends. Let's just put them in a room and have them play with each other and they'll learn how to do it right. That's not actually a thing. We have to teach the relationship skills in the same way that we teach every other skill, right? We teach the ABCs, and we teach how to do multiplication tables. We teach those skills very well. But friendship and communication skills, that's just like you just get it by watching, and you actually don't get it by watching. So when you think about your way of communicating, the difficulty that girls have in relationships with other girls, the relational aggression, the number one cause of that is their difficulty in healthy and assertive communication. So when you think of the way that you communicate, and I like this example because I think it's just so relatable because everyone goes grocery shopping. Well, I mean now, actually we don't, we just have them delivered and like, put them in the car. But back when you did go to the grocery store, like I won't even be able to use this analogy at some point very soon. Okay, so let's say you leave here, you're gonna stop at the grocery store on your way home, and you have to go to the deli counter, right? You're gonna get lunch meat. And so it's like there's a couple people there, but it's not super busy, right? It's like no one's pulling numbers. But you see like there's someone who's getting waited on, and then there's somebody else, and then you're next. So you're like, okay, like I know who goes next. Person turns around and says, who's next? And you're like, and then Susie Q comes up and she's like, oh, I'm ready, I'm gonna go next. And she just cuts you right off. You are at a critical decision-making moment in your life. Dun dun, what will she do? Okay, so put yourself there. Just think about like what your default reaction is. So there's lots of ways we can respond. We can be aggressive, right? Which would be, excuse me, I was next in line. What is wrong with you? Did you think that you didn't have to wait in line? Right? We make a big production with a reaction and a response that is too big for the situation, right? Like the security gets called, the manager's like, man, you're gonna have to leave, Jenny, right? And we don't get our lunch meat, and we're embarrassed, and we're probably on like a security footage somewhere, and then we're, you know, it doesn't happen for us, right? So that's aggressive. We have some girls who their default is aggressive. And then there's passive, right? We let it go, right? We might be like, fine. And we wait, right? And then this person has like the specialty order of like thinly sliced ham and plastic sheets between every piece of cheese and like quarter pounds of everything, right? And then we're just like waiting, we don't say anything, and then we walk away, and who are we mad at? Ourselves, right? We walk away and we think of all the great responses we should have. Oh my God, I totally would have said this, and why didn't I just say that? Passive, I just let it roll. And then there's like passive aggressive, which is like, I let it roll, but I make sure everybody else sees this. Like, excuse me, did you just see her? I might like snap a picture of her and be like, look out for this woman, she cuts in line at Giant Eagle. Right? And I'll post it, and it'll just be real passive aggressive, right? I just want to involve everybody else, but I don't want to tell her. Just make sure everybody else knows. I want to embarrass her, right? And then there's like assertive, right? Hey, excuse me, I was actually next. It doesn't have to be like, excuse me, right? It's just like, hey, actually I was next in line. For some of us, that would like make us sweat to actually say that, right? We would just let it go, whatever, or we get real sassy, you know? So, you have your default communication style. And that was like an example that has no consequences in life at all. Right? None. There's no lasting consequences of when you get your lunch meat. Think about relationships and the default communication that we have in relationships and how it impacts them. If we have an inability to say like, hey, that totally wasn't cool that you told me your sleepover was canceled, and then like posted all the pictures on Instagram. Like I thought that was really rude. Instead of being like, oh hi, how was your weekend? Oh, mine was so fun, right? We know what's happening. We're feeling left out, betrayed, hurt, but our inability to communicate assertively keeps authenticity from prevailing in the relationship. The thing that impacts girls' relationships with each other, and often women's relationships with each other, is a lack of authenticity because I'm afraid to speak my mind because I have to be nice. Being nice is superseding being honest for a lot of girls. Because that's the number one thing, like, be nice, be nice. But I can be nice and confident at the same time. Okay? Somehow we've juxtaposed those ideas, that having an opinion and being nice don't go together. Or that confidence and kindness can't coexist. If I'm nice, I just have to let you do whatever you want. So you think I'm nice. And so what happens then is instead of communicating assertively and telling people, we let things roll, and then we get into these really covert ways of being mean to each other. We spread rumors. We gossip. We do passive-aggressive kinds of things. That's why you see that relationship bubble up for girls in their conflict with each other, because lots of them haven't learned how to communicate assertively with each other. And how to respect assertiveness from someone else. Because some people are like, oh, she has no trouble being assertive. And then it's like, well, what if somebody tells her that they hurt her feelings, that she hurt their feelings? Oh, she loses it, right? So we have to teach that give and take and boundaries in healthy and respectful relationships. So when we think about these challenges that girls are facing and that girls being mean to each other, we often call it drama. Oh my God, these girls are so dramatic. And I hear a lot of girls say, like, I'm more friends with guys because, like, girls are so dramatic. Right? I just hate other girls, it's so much drama. And I hear teachers and counselors say that too, like, oh my gosh, if I have to mediate this group of girls one more time, I'm gonna lose my mind. And sometimes we minimize what they're experiencing as drama instead of acknowledging that it's anger and it's frustration. And what they're dealing with is an inability to cope with that. So if we shifted that from like, oh, dismissing it as drama and help them develop coping skills to deal with anger, we could transform that completely. Because they're actually feeling upset. And they're actually feeling hurt or wounded or left out or angry or sad. Like those are legitimate feelings. And so acknowledging them and helping them deal with that shifts their abilities to deal with it in the future. I think if we approached relationships as and forming strong relationships as a skill and experience deficit, not a character deficit, because we're just like, oh, that girl's so mean. She's just mean. I think, yeah, she might do mean things, but she might not have had the ability to learn or the opportunity to learn effective relationship skills yet. Okay? It's not necessarily, particularly for young people. Like when we're grown up, we get to decide. When you're young, you're still figuring it out. So it's not a character flaw. It's the fact that she hasn't had the opportunity to learn that yet. I think I touched on all of this. Okay. Lastly, in my 10 minutes, oh my gosh. I'll go through this quick and then I will open up for questions and I will stay afterwards if there's anyone who wants to ask questions. So I want to talk quickly about confidence. And what you saw in the graph, or in the video, which by the way, you can pull that video off our website and share it and watch it, whatever. You see this drop in confidence, but what you didn't see in that video is the overlay of this other data point, which is the percent of girls who wish to change their appearance. Okay. So in 5th grade, most girls describe themselves as confident. Few girls want to change how they look. Look what happens in 9th grade. For girls and women, confidence is tangled up intensely in body image and appearance. Intensely. It is the #1 predictor of how I describe myself as confident. Women and girls who don't like their body. So the way that women and girls who don't like their body don't like themselves, right? They describe themselves as less confident and feel and have lower self-esteem. And it only goes in that direction, right? That sense of myself and my body and my weight and my shape and all of that is so tangled up in how girls and women feel about themselves. And it's kind of hard to undo it. So it's kind of frustrating too, right? Because we're like, why do they care so much about this? And so somebody raised their hand and has a little girl. And so let's say there's a little girl who's like 3, right? And she like runs in here and she's like in her little dress and her pigtails and has like these cute, she's all real cute and all the things. And she would run in here and like stand up here and we would all go, oh my gosh, you are so cute, right? You're beautiful. Look at you. I love your little outfit and your shoes and your hair. Oh my God, you're precious. And then we'd take her over to meet our coworkers. And we'd be like, hi, this is my daughter. And then we'd be like, oh, look at you, beautiful. You are stunning. And then we take her to her grandparents' house and they open the door and they say, hey, gorgeous. Every time that little girl walks in the room, the first thing we comment on is how she looks. From the time she's little. From the time she's in like a little stroller. Pink blanket, beautiful, right? We didn't even see the baby, we just know there's a pink blanket, so she must be beautiful, right? And then if there's like a blue blanket, we're like, oh, he's handsome. And then if there's like a green or a yellow blanket, you're like, what's their name, right? So I can make the appropriate compliment, right? But when we think about that, right, we're reinforcing first for how they look. Second, for everything else about them. Their characteristics and their work ethic and their interests and the last book they read or the games that they like. That's all second to looks first. We don't do the same thing to boys. First thing for girls.
Yes, we do.
We do?
Oh, you're so handsome. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
How we see it play out is that when girls are like 11 and 12, now they're posting pictures, right? With like the universal sexy face. And what do social media posts, what's the purpose of them? To get likes, right? And there is an appropriate number of likes to get in an appropriate amount of time, or else the picture will get deleted, right? And then we're like, what is wrong with these girls? All they care about is how they look. And I'm like, well, we did that, right? We reinforced that for them first at the expense of everything else that they are. And so when we see this happen, it makes a lot of sense. These things get tangled up early. And when we think about the messages that girls are taking in, that is impacting their self-concept, it's also impacting their decision-making. Overall, we know that more confident girls make better decisions. But we're not intensely and vigorously focused on creating confident girls. Because confidence impacts my relationships, who I hang out with, how I allow my friends to treat me, how I allow my dates to treat me, right? Because if I stand up for myself, well, they might not like me anymore, and then I won't have any friends. Confidence impacts our academic pursuits. When we think about when girls are making their course plans, 7th and 8th grade, they're making their 4-year course plans. That tends to be where their confidence is at its lowest point. So is it going to be like, oh my gosh, totally put me in that calculus class? Or might it be like, like math is good, right? They might make different kinds of decisions. It impacts careers, it impacts leadership. So when we're thinking about the core constructs and sense of self, we have to be thinking about what else is going on for girls. And we have to see this core sense of confidence and what else it's related to. Less confident girls are less likely to speak their mind. They're less likely to disagree with others. They're less likely to believe they're smart. They're less likely to want to be a leader. And when we think about girls overall, and I've talked to girls about this, and I've had this huge auditorium of girls, and I've had half of them stand up, right? And kind of take this look around. Because half of them represent the girls who don't think they're smart enough, who are embarrassed to be smart, and who don't speak their mind. And I'm like, what in the world are we missing out on in a school, in a community, in a society where half of our girls aren't feeling like they can give everything that they have to bring to the table? We have a responsibility to change that, right? We have a responsibility to value them differently, to care for them differently, to help them find value in themselves. Like, I think we have to help girls find value in themselves so that they can add value to the world, and that's our responsibility. I am getting the wrap up sign, and I'm gonna end on this one. I'm gonna end on this one piece because I think it's really important. So I talk a lot about confidence, right, and the importance of self-confidence, my belief in, like, how I feel about myself. The other piece of it is a concept called self-efficacy, right? Self-concept is how I feel about myself. Self-efficacy is my belief in my ability to actualize my skills. That example that we talked about earlier, like the smartest girls not thinking that they are, or not thinking they can do it, that's a self-efficacy issue. So we have to develop confidence in girls, but also the belief, the internalized belief in their abilities to actualize those skills. Self-efficacy makes an independent contribution to academic outcomes. So if you have two girls who are the same academically, and this one has lower self-confidence and doesn't really believe she's that good at things, and this one has a belief in her ability to do it, even in academic equals, this girl's gonna outperform the other one, right? It makes an independent contribution to outcome. So just having the academic rigor or competence isn't enough. We have to be building up that internalized sense of self as well. So, and this is like my favorite thing, is like, we build confidence through experiences, not through compliments. Right? It's like, we don't just say, you're so great at that, and look at you're so smart, and you're so good, and you did so well. Confidence comes from experiencing myself successful, not from you telling me how wonderful I am. And actually, we know that there's a connection between you telling your kids how great they are all the time. You're so great, you're just so great, because you're my kid and you're great. That kids who are super great, like told that they're super great all the time just because they're great, because we think that builds their confidence. You have like a super great kid and you're like, hey, you're so great, and I just tell you how great you are. And I say, hey, great kid, here's these 2 math tests. You can pick which one you want to take. What will super great kid take? This one's harder, this one's easier. Take the easier one, right? Because he's real tangled up in being great. So we know that kids who are given general praise take fewer risks because they're afraid to fail. And so helping develop competencies means also developing an acceptance of failure and using that as a push forward to growth. And so giving opportunities for experiences where it might not go perfect all the time, right? But I'm going to build the confidence connected to that. So the full Girls Index report you can pull down from our website. It's about 36 or 37 pages. There's also an executive overview, and I think there might be some at our table. We have a table right outside here, and my colleague Lauren is going to be out there too. And then if you connect with us on social, you'll see the new data and programs that are coming out. So we have the full Girls Index report. We put out an impact report in April on girls in sports, where we took the data from girls who play sports and girls who don't, and looked at some of the variances. And then we have one coming out in October on girls in STEM and careers. And then later in the winter, we have another report coming out that looks at diversity and different demographic variables and how those contribute to outcomes for girls as well. So you'll be seeing, if you connect with us, you'll be seeing more data, because we just want people to have access to it who care about girls. So thank you for making time. I know that we're out of time, but I'm happy to hang. If anyone wants to ask individual questions, I'm happy to do that. So thank you for your time today.